Hello fellow woodworkers and welcome to the Garage Workshop and this second video in the series of the Garage Partition. As you can see behind me, the partition is finished, and in this video I'll show you how we got from where we were here to how we are here. Roll the credits. So if you watch part one of the video, you'll remember I finished just as I'd put up the partition and completed the installation. So the next thing I moved on to was putting up the MDF. This is 18mm MDF. It's just standard 18mm MDF from B&Q. So I'm just marking off the correct size. How I'd done the upright structures, it left me just enough room to fit both of them in with, to be honest, very minimal trimming up, which is what I went for. So I marked up the sides, got the circular saw out and just trimmed off the edge before I offered it up and fixed it to the wall. Just one little note here, and I'm sure if you're like me, an average everyday woodworker, you don't often think about the weight of these boards, and they are massive and very heavy. And although you can't see it in the video, it took quite a lot of effort to get this board on the wall. And as you can see, there is a gap at the bottom which I hadn't allowed for. I'm not quite sure what happened here in terms of the measuring. I obviously got something wrong, but I was expecting this board to go floor to ceiling, which of course it couldn't have gone all the way because the apex of the board, putting it in the wall, it wouldn't have fitted. But there was a bigger gap in the bottom than I had expected. So to take care of that, all I did was get a piece of skirting board, measured it and attached it to the board. So I fitted both boards up. They went in nice and straight, nice and level. So having seen the gap that I just talked about, which was the gap at the bottom of the MDF, I just decided to go out. I went out and bought a skirting board, which wasn't very expensive. I got it from B&Q. It was only a few pound. As you can see, it's slightly bowed, but I think maybe when I looked through every single piece of wood in there, and I didn't manage to find one that didn't have some sort of bow or kink, and the ones that didn't have a bow and kink had horrible big knots in the front of them. And it was more important to me really to get one that didn't have the knots. So I put it in, I marked up the screw holes, and because obviously I was screwing straight into the MDF, I just used self-tapping screws to fix it to the wall. I actually had to buy some more because the only self-tapping screws that I had were about 18mm, I think, and that wasn't quite enough. Wasn't giving me quite enough purchase and getting it fixed on enough. So I got some self-tapping screws. The next thing I did was offer it up. It was exactly the correct size. The only other thing I've done in between was just fill in the cracks in the plaster up the cracks there. The next stage was the base, and as you can see, the base is absolutely huge. It's 2 meters by just over a meter. So I marked up the stud and cut them down to get the base. Here we go with the obligatory garage workshop pocket hole video. I didn't make too many pocket holes in this one. I did when I was making the doors of the cabinets, but these were for the sort of cross-bearing struts that went in between the two, because when I built this, I didn't want it going anywhere, knowing it was going to have a lot of weight on it too. It's a substantial, sturdy structure. So when I managed to get the pocket holes done, I laid it all out and just tested them, make sure it was all nice and flush, which luckily it was. So after I'd done the pocket holes, I offered up the struts across the middle. I put quite a few struts in. I'd done pocket holes in two sides. Wasn't sure if it was easy to see from the video, but each of these sort of cross member, or the braces, I put two pocket holes in one end and then a single pocket hole in the other. So across each end, there were sort of three screws in, two from one side and one from the other side, which actually worked out really well. And I think it gave it a lot of extra rigidity, which is what I was after, because knowing how much weight this is going to take, it's very important that the entire structure is able to take it. So when I'd fixed it in, the next thing to do was level off the two ends you can see there. So to level it off, I used my saber saw, my reciprocating saw. If you haven't had a chance to look, on my channel I've got a video, a sort of tool review video of this saw, and I could have done lots of things. I've got a Japanese pawl saw, I could have used that. I had lots of options, but I just wanted to give the saw a go. It wasn't brilliantly neat, but that's down to user error rather than the actual saw. So I leveled them all off, and again, I knew this side was going against the wall, so I wasn't too worried about how it looked. So the next thing I did was flip the table over, and as you can see, I'm just marking out an edge, just an indent, because I didn't want the 18mm plywood to get in the way of screwing the unit base to the bottom of the cabinet. So I just came in 18mm and put it all down. You can see screwing and fixing it in. The other thing that you might be able to see at the front, I deliberately left a gap, a sort of kick plate on the front of the base there. So after I had finished the base, I did test fit it. You can't see it in this video because I forgot to move the camera, if I'm being honest. But after we did that, the next stage was the painting, which I'm very thankful Mrs. B did for me. The only other thing that I didn't capture on the camera, you can see in the picture across the top there, I just bought a very thin piece of pine. It was just an edging strip, again from B&Q. It was literally, I think it was about £2.47, and I just put that across. I'd already filled the holes and plastered them in, but the join straight down the middle, there you'll see Mrs. B painting over it in a minute, was slightly out. There was a slight edge. I did sand it down with a sanding block first, but it probably took 2 or 3 good chugs of filler to get it flat and level. But by the end, it was completely level. There was a problem with the paint, which I will let this man coming on now explain to you. Okay, so as you can see, the wall has had quite a lot of paint actually. I'm not quite sure what's going on. I've painted MDF lots and lots of times with that acrylic undercoat, and for some reason it just looks really bad. The finish is really bad. That's why I sanded it down. So I'm going to leave it overnight and give it another go tomorrow. But that's now 3 quite thick coats of acrylic primer that this wall has had. And as I said, when I've done this before, I've never done more than 1 coat. When I made the radiator covers, I used the same paint and I only put 1 coat on, and then it was ready for the top coat, and that was exactly the same MDF, exactly the same material. So I'm not sure if the paint's gone or I've also switched rollers. I had the foam roller to start with, and I switched over to sort of more the raggy type one, and that has improved it. But I think that's going to need at least one more coat of undercoat and probably 2 or 3 top coats to cover it all. And as you'll have seen, I re-sanded the joining line. I wasn't very happy with it, although it's made the paint look a bit patchy, but I wasn't really very happy with the joining line, so I've re-sanded that. So I'll leave that overnight, and then tomorrow we'll give it another coat and see how it looks. Thankfully, I'm very happy to say that it only took 2 coats of sort of top coat to get the garage looking good. I would have put the footage in, but let's face it, you can only have so much fun watching a man paint a wall white, can't you? So after I painted that, I then moved on to the base unit. Now this is the colour that I selected. I'm pretty sure it's going to divide opinion. I don't know why, I can't explain it, but I absolutely love this colour. It's the Aldi outdoor garden paint, and it's absolutely fantastic stuff. It goes on a dream, and I didn't even use a tin. I probably used 2/3 of a tin in all of the painting that I did that you can see me do here. So I put on the first coat and just touched it up with a brush there to make sure all the nooks and crannies were in it, and then I flicked it over and gave it another coat on the top. So after I did that, as you can see, it looked really nice, the final colour. I just put on some nose frills, sort of screw fix basic trade yachting varnish. I've used this a few times. You do have to use this outside, just to warn you if you're going to use it, because it is really, really strong smelling. And I went to town a little bit on here, knowing this would be the bottom of the unit, and the likelihood is it would get water on it from different things. I'd probably lay it on a little bit more than I would traditionally. I use 2 different types of varnish. I actually used a Poundland varnish, which you'll see later in the video. But as you can see, it looks nice. See, the painting this end looks a bit rough, but that was the side that was going against the wall. It's still got the masking tape. But I was very happy with how this all turned out at the end, and I thought overall it looked really, really good. I was very happy with the colour as well. So while I was waiting for the paint and the varnish to dry, I went on to making the sides of the cabinet with another piece of plywood. As you can see, I'm using the McAllister plunge saw here. I did a recent review of this, but I don't think it'll ever make my channel because it wasn't very good and it was totally eclipsed by Peter Millard's one that he's posted on his. But I did it in a slightly unorthodox way. I used the exact piece of cut wood to measure the second piece of cut wood, which I know isn't the way that people tend to do things like this, but it gave me 2 pieces of wood that were absolutely bang on with each other, so it was a good way of doing it. I really couldn't get on with this McAllister saw, but now I've actually I took the plunge and I bought one. I took the plunge and I bought one, but I bought the Parkside saw, which I've loved. I've used it a few times since I've had it, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. When I cut this initial sheet of plywood down, I was left with 2 really long thin offcuts, which you'll see now, and they were absolutely perfect for making the braces with, which go inside the cabinet. So that's the next thing that I did after I cut the wood down to the correct size. Yes, more painting. These were the 2 side pieces that were going to be the side of the cabinet. They were the things that I painted next. Yep, the next thing was more pocket holes. I did the pocket holes on the door this time, and I had a rough measurement on the door of on the side of the cabinet, which is what you can see here. I had a rough measurement of exactly where I wanted it to be, but two things came from this. Number one, doing pocket holes on large pieces of wood like this is very difficult on your own. That's the first thing. And the second thing is you have to make sure absolutely that you get this exactly spot on and correct. And it did make me think actually I should make a little jig for my pocket hole that just sinks it down a bit, because it was quite windy this day. I mean, I've muted it, you can't hear it on the clip, but it was quite windy and the boards were sort of moving around a bit. But I managed to get the pocket holes in no problem, so I did those for both sides, and then after that it was time to offer it up and see how it all fit together. So I actually sort of did a dry fit. I don't mind admitting, by this stage, the base weighed a ton. I was pleased to see it on the floor eventually after all the work I've done on it. So when I did that, I offered up the side. You can see there's an unpainted edge there, which I did deliberately. It was meant to be a sort of design feature, but I actually really don't like it. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do about it yet either, because I have varnished it in. I think I'll have to rub it down and paint over the top. But the good thing was the side panel fitted absolutely perfectly. It was plumb. I did notice a tiny little kink in the middle of the panel. You can't see it as clearly from this side, but you can from the other side. So although I was happy, I did want to take that kink out. And the good thing about doing pocket holes and using plywood is you are able to sort of self-correct some of the plywood. So when I put the first screw in, I put the second screw in, and when I put the third screw in, I was able to sort of suck it in or bend it straight and then fix the screw on, and that kept it true. The only other thing to note here was I used the proper Craig pocket hole screws here. You probably can't see it on the video, but when I put the one in the end closest to my pot of screws there, it actually went through and split the wood, which I was very unhappy about. But I just reversed the screw a tiny bit, about a mil, and I was able to knock it back in. And actually in the finished cabinet you can't see it, but I did swap screws halfway through and sort of walked away from the Craig one and just used normal brass screws, because what I didn't want to do was replicate that issue for the rest of the cabinet. So after I'd attached that side and sort of back brace, I went for a full-on cabinet build, putting together, which surprisingly was a lot less problematic than I thought. I did have a little bit of an issue with that back support that you can see by my foot there, and as you can see from the video a bit, I think it's bowed, so I had to sort of put an emergency screw. I just screwed something into the base to sort of keep it in place. I didn't screw it to the base. So I got the other panel lined up and I put the whole thing together. So I was pleased with how that had gone. And as in woodworking, things can always not go to plan, but this is one of those occasions where it did. So next I filled in the sort of top section braces. After securing it to either side of the cabinet, I just popped in a couple of little screws. You can see where I've raised it up there. It's just sagging in the middle, which probably I should have thought of and maybe put a block of wood in. But I just popped in a couple of screws and screwed them through, not into the wall, just through the unit. They're only small screws just to keep it upright. It was at this point, fixing the front brace on, that I realised life would be a lot easier if there was somebody to hold the end, because it was quite difficult to attach this. As you can see, it fell off and sort of keep it level. But I went for a clamp in the end on the side, but that wasn't working effectively. So I used a combination of different things to sort of prop up the board, which very Heath Robinson, but it worked. So that kept it nice and level, and I was able to get the screws in. Again, I had the same problem with the screws here coming through the side, you might see, so I just stepped them back a couple of mil and it sorted it. But overall, this stage actually went quite well, and it was very level all the way around, so I was very pleased. So having put the cabinet together, the next thing I wanted to do was to make a sort of strut, which was going to work as a sort of structural support as well as a divider for the cabinet, because obviously it was going to sag in the middle. So I had a couple of offcuts. Unfortunately, the offcut I had wasn't the correct size I needed to go all the way through. So I cut two bits and I sort of joined them together when they were in. So here we are, yet more pocket holes. But I managed to get the two bits to fit almost exactly, which is what I wanted. So now there's a sort of continued support going all the way through the centre of the cabinet. So when those pocket holes were finished, I took the panels in and inserted them. And as you can see here, there's the pocket holes at the top. Actually, I didn't need some of those pocket holes. I sort of drilled more pocket holes than I needed. So I fixed it in. It was a really nice fit, this backside piece, and I got it level with the spirit level. Then I put the front in. I knew the front was obviously going to overhang, but I wasn't sure by how much. But it looks like a completed panel. So I took it off. I just quickly popped it off screen. I popped it through the table saw just to get it nice and level. And then I re-offered it up. And as I said, I was surprised. You can just about see on the floor there, I think, the dark mark where I'd drawn a line, rulered line, to sort of keep it together. So when I brought the piece that I'd cut back in, it fitted absolutely perfectly, top and bottom. It was absolutely fine. The only thing was there was a slight edge in the wood, which gave me a tiny little lip at the top. If I did it at the bottom, it sort of lent the panel in too much. So I just switched it upside down and filled in the pocket holes. So after all of that process finished, this is what the cabinet looked like in place with all of the struts and the supporting beams in it. The only thing I had a little thought about was what to do for the top of the cabinet. I went through 3 or 4 different ideas, but eventually I settled on like a ready-made door blank, which you'll see in the next video. I did film putting that in, but unfortunately I think I must have pressed the button twice and it didn't record. So that is the end of this second video in the series. In the final video, which will be out next week, I will put together the cabinets that are on above the main bit, the sort of shelf cabinets, and I'll talk through how I made the doors. I made the doors in 2 completely different ways, one using MDF and one using plywood, and I have to say, you'll see for yourself in the next video, I can see why people don't make cabinet doors out of plywood. Basically, it was an absolute nightmare, and they are on, but they will very much need to be replaced in the future. So thank you very much for watching this second video. If you haven't subscribed already, please do, and I look forward to finishing the cabinet off with you next 3. Happy woodworking!